Every year, resourceful industrialists and gadgeteers bestow upon the housewife more appliances calculated to make her work easy and provide leisure for her and her family.
In many parts of the world, women have come a long way in terms of social and economic mobility, as compared to decades ago when a woman's place was in the home, shut out from positions of power. Women today enjoy greater freedom and rights. They have access to education and employment, and in some countries, they even have increased visibility in politics, traditionally a male-dominated sphere. But despite these advances, gender disparity still persists. Today, one of the most hotly debated issues among scholars and leaders in the corporate and political world is the gender gap. According to a report published by the World Economic Forum entitled The Global Gender Gap, female underrepresentation in political leadership and the highest paying jobs still persists. This underrepresentation may be due to existing preconceptions and gender stereotypes which often work against women being considered by employers for leadership positions. Women in Charge, an article published in IMF's Finance and Development magazine, discusses this underrepresentation of women in leadership positions. According to the authors, as a way to remedy this, many countries have introduced controversial quota initiatives to increase women's leadership roles, both in the political arena and in some countries on corporate boards. For example, in 1993, an amendment was made to the Constitution of India to reserve 1/3 of the seats for women at every level of local government. To measure the effectiveness of this quota initiative, the authors conducted a study in rural West Bengal, which yielded dramatic results. One key finding was that change doesn't happen overnight. It was only after mandated and repeated exposure to female leaders that voters' attitudes and perceptions changed. They came to the understanding that women can be effective and competent leaders. Another finding was that exposure to female leaders significantly reduced existing male gender stereotypes. Despite the deeply rooted cultural norms, instituting the quota led to twice as many women competing in village council elections, even in places where seats had no longer been reserved for women. Finally, and perhaps the most important finding of the study, revealed that repeated exposure to female leadership reduced the gender gap, not only by raising the aspirations of parents for their girls, but also those aspirations that girls had for themselves. The rise in girls' aspirations was accompanied by real-world improvements, especially in terms of getting an education, where boys had a slight advantage. Remarkably, this gap was entirely erased after repeated exposure to female leadership. Female leaders can change the aspiration of girls by undertaking policies that make it easier for them to succeed, or simply by providing a role model of a successful woman. This role model effect, according to the authors, had the potential to shape future generations of parents to invest more in their girls and for girls themselves to aspire to leadership positions which could potentially help in bridging the gender gap. Though it is still unknown if these policy initiatives can lead to changing preconceptions and gender stereotypes, those who have implemented them remain hopeful that putting women in leadership positions can catalyze change.